Now, as an organization, you should really be very careful with the kind of roles that you're assigning to users, and the law of least privilege must really apply when it comes to identity and access management. So within my Microsoft 365 Admin Center, I can go to roles in order for me to establish who has what roles within my organization. So by going to role assignment, I can go to AI administrators, for example, and over here, just by selecting AI administrators, I'll be able to look at the assigned and be able to tell who within my organization has that role. And also I'll be able to see what kind of permissions they're able to perform and things like that. Now, when you're assigning these roles, the kind of roles that you should really pay much attention to are roles such as the global administrator, as this really has unlimited access to the entire management sphere of your tenant. So you took off your Exchange, your SharePoint admins, and other admins that you've got, your Intune, etc. They would all be managed by anybody who has the global admin role. So if I go to global admin over here, I can see the permissions, I can see the users that are assigned, and I can also get general information over here. And I can see that for this particular role, you'd notice that there are only 2 assigned users, which is what Microsoft actually recommends, that it should only have 2 at least, and at most, only have 4 global administrators within your environment. So what do we do when we have scenarios where users simply want to have access to certain resources that require them to perform certain tasks? Well, that is where privileged identity management actually comes into play. For example, if this particular user in this case wants to go and add a domain name for one of our tenants or maybe one of the clients that we have, we can actually see plainly that if we go to domains over here, this user has no access to domains. They're not able to add anything. But in the same way, if I went to a different user, just quickly pull up a different user over here, bring them into your view. This user over here has a global admin role. So if we go to settings and we go to domains over here, you'll be able to see that they have the add domain feature, which the other user does not have. And if the rule simply says within your organization that this particular user is maybe a level 1 support who does not really require to have this kind of role, then there is no need for us to actually give them the global admin role. But if they are maybe somebody who occasionally needs to perform this particular task, then we can go ahead and do that and allow them to perform that particular task whenever they need to and revoke the task when they no longer need that particular privilege. So how do we go about setting up that kind of privilege or pin up a user within Microsoft 365? Well, the easiest way to go about that is for us to access our identity or Entra ID. And once Entra ID is open, we simply have to go and look for privilege and identity management under the ID governance tab. So simply expand that. And here we have PIM, privilege identity management. Go ahead and open it. And in this area, we then can add the kind of roles we're interested in and apply those roles to the users that we simply want to participate in that particular task. Now, we have different types of tools over here. We can go ahead and manage the various access that has been provided so far. We can look into the active ones. Here you have JIT or just in time, which works in tandem with PIM to ensure that all the users that are granted access are granted that access for a limited period of time. You can also go about discovering and exploring or monitoring the various users who have been granted access and when that access was granted, etc. So let's go ahead and select manage, and from here we can go ahead and use any of these provided roles, or we can simply go and click on add assignment, and this still allows us to provide those roles from here. So let's say we're interested in assigning the global admin role. So I'll go ahead and just type global over here, and there we have the global administrator role. And with that in place, we then can assign this to a member, and the member that we're actually using at this particular point is Alex. So go ahead and search for Alex in this area. Just type Alex over there, and this should give us the target user. It's also possible for us to assign this to a group, and every member who is in that group would actually be able to assume that particular role. So let's go ahead and click on select. And from here, we can go and finalize these by clicking on next. So this brings us into the settings area where you want to leave this option as eligible. What this simply means is that the intended user can simply go ahead and look for privileged identity management and request for access, which you can later on approve, and they would then be able to have access to whatever roles or resources they need access to. If you set this to active, it simply means you want to give them that access in real time and provide more details as to why you'd want to do that, such as your ticket number and things like that. those are the kind of things that the user would also have to provide each and every time they're actually accessing these resources. So set this to eligible, and we can always play around with the timing over here. Permanently eligible simply means this user would be given something like a year of being able to access that. It's not really the kind of access where you'd want to revoke each and every time they have access to that resource. However, what this simply means is that they'll be able to continually request for approval. So if you're going to remove this option over here, it simply means you want to give them for that particular period, once in a lifetime or once in a year, or only when that need arises. And you can make these adjustments over here as required. So let's say somebody who was doing a project and they simply want access to rectify something. They might just need an hour or something. So the difference here is this. If I'm going to set you to permanent eligible, you're probably an administrator who constantly needs access, maybe once a week or whatever the need is. But if you are maybe somebody who's working on a project, I don't want you to continue having access to resources even after the project is over. So what I'm going to do over here is to give you access for an hour. And what I would do, I would simply come to this area and change my 3 to 4 over there. And you'd notice that this permanently eligible has a duration of a year. So I'm going to change that 2027 to 2026 so that it aligns well. And once we have that in place, I'll go ahead and click on assign. And once we've assigned, you would notice that our PIM over here for this particular user should kick in as successful. So at this particular point, Alex can now sign in and make a request for privileged identity management. Let's go ahead and see if that would be something that we can do in that tenant and see if we'll be able to access or even add a domain. All right, so we're back in Alex account and we should be able to see, all right, there's Alex account. And over here, we are right in the domains area. We can see the domains that are currently in here, but we cannot really see the feature that allows us to add a domain. So how do we enable that? Well, for us to be able to do so, we first of all have to go ahead and invoke the PIM role. So simply type PIM over there and see if it'll be able to pick that up. Okay, so open admin portal. That's what it requires us to do. And this is going to be pointing to a Microsoft Entra. And once we're in here, we'll go ahead and search for privileged identity management, or just by typing PIM over there. Let's see what we're able to get. Right, there are more other features that are provided over here. And there we have PIM. Simply go ahead and click on it. And once it opens, we should go and look at my roles. So from here, we'll be able to see what roles have been assigned to this particular user. And over here, we can see that we have the global administrator role. This has been assigned to us, and that's the duration over here. And we can go ahead and try to activate that role. Okay, so as part of the activation process, we'll be able to provide a reason as to why we need this. So simply go ahead over there and say, all right, this is for ticket number. Let's say we've got ticket number, whatever that is. All right, this must be ticket rather. So with that in place, we'll go ahead and click on activate. Okay, you should always give a justification as to why that is required so that it is also recorded in the process of the audit and everything else that comes with that particular request. All right, and once this goes through, we should be able to go ahead and check whether we'll be able to add a domain. Oh, there we go. So this has been activated. All right, and then we can go to our domains area, just refresh this. Now, if we had set a validation and approval stage for this particular request, it'll have to go through to a global administrator. The global administrator has to go and check against that ticket number and further on allow or deny that access. Now, I don't want to go into that process for now, but let's just go ahead and see if we'll be able to see the features that allow us to add a domain in this area. Not yet. All right, I'll keep on refreshing that. We know that for sure this part has been covered. So all we're waiting for is to see those tools that allow us to add a domain in this area while we are signed in as Alex. All right, and after a couple of refreshings, there we have the add domain and by domain features, which we so much needed. So this particular user over here, Alex, can now go ahead and click on this feature and be able to add a domain using the account. But this privilege is only going to last for the time that we've specified. And if we head back to the global administrator who is permanent in this particular tenant, we can actually view quite a lot of features over here. Let's quickly pull this up back here. You'll be able to see whether we have any pending roles or any roles that require approval. We have quite a lot of settings that we can actually play with in this particular area, from management settings that pertain to privilege and identity management, that we can make adjustments to and make sure that everything aligns with the kind of features that we simply want to see as far as security is concerned with your environment. This, my friend, is how we can leverage privileged identity management and just in time, whether within Microsoft 365 or Entra ID or even Azure, to manage access to critical resources within your environment. For now, I'll see you in the next one.